Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is the importance of using a dynamic pricing tool for your short-term rentals. All badass short-term rental hosts maximize their rental income by using a dynamic pricing tool. Here are 4 reasons why you too should start using one. Number 1, optimize earnings. Dynamic pricing tools automatically adjust your nightly rates based on real-time factors like demand, local events, and competitor pricing. This ensures you're not leaving money on the table during high demand periods or overpricing during slow seasons. Number 2, stay competitive. These tools help you stay competitive by analyzing market trends and adjusting your prices to attract more bookings, even during low demand periods. Number 3, save time. Manually tracking market fluctuations can be time-consuming. A dynamic pricing tool automates the process, freeing you up to focus on other aspects of hosting. Number 4, increased occupancy. By adjusting rates to reflect current market conditions, you'll improve your chances of booking your property more consistently, leading to higher overall occupancy. So, investing in a dynamic pricing tool can significantly boost your revenue and streamline your badass short-term rental business. Go check one out today. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us Cory Chaney. Cory is a design consultant for West Shore Home, the largest family-owned and operated home remodeling company in the nation, operating in 21 states and 41 locations nationwide. He has personally flipped 2 properties, one of which we will be discussing on today's podcast. I have known Cory for a couple years now and had a front row seat to his real estate investment journey. It's my pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome Cory Chaney.
Yay!
Yay!
We're here.
You are here. I have been asking you to come on for a while now, so I'm so grateful to have you. I even confused you a week or 2 ago with someone else, but because I've just been chomping at the bit to get you on here. So, Cory, thank you for being here, and give the audience a little background of how you got involved with real estate.
Oh, well, it's quite a journey, and most of it's all bad. There's not a lot of good, being honest. If we're going back in time, probably to 2019, right before COVID, sadly, not to bring it down a notch, but I lost my mom and my stepdad back then, and I inherited their home, my family home where I grew up.
And where is that?
And
where is it?
Porter, Texas, just
Okay.
right outside of Houston. Yeah, that's where I grew up. And when that happened, at the time we just had to make a decision. We were in the process of buying our own home, me and my wife. We had just my daughter at the time. We were looking at buying a house, and we ended up backing out of that so we could move into that house and fix it up. And because I wanted to keep it in the family at the time, and didn't realize how bad in shape it was. My parents, they went on disability a long, long time ago. They couldn't work, and yeah, they just kind of let the place go. And I didn't really realize it. I was busy with my own life and stuff. And when we moved in, there were fleas in the house.
Oof.
The roof was all messed up. There was mold on the ceilings and walls and the closets and stuff. All kinds of stuff, right? So we couldn't just move into it. So we had to stay with my in-laws for 2 months, 3 months. And, while I was at work, at the time I was a sales manager for a beer distributor back then. And so on the weekends and my nights off, I was in there just ripping up carpet, tearing up drywall, doing all this stuff, myself, getting rid of the fleas. Apparently there was, we discovered 2 possums that were living underneath the sink. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I still got pictures of that. It's quite a sight. So that solved the flea issue. Got rid of them. Yeah, it was just a complete, essentially gut job. We did a lot of the work ourselves. I hired a contractor to help us do some of the stuff, but most of the stuff we did ourselves. And it took a couple of years to really get it to where we wanted it to be. But by that time, we were just so fed up with that house. I just didn't want to stay there anymore. And we were planning on moving somewhere else in Texas at the time, but we listed the house. That was a whole ordeal on its own, but ended up netting about $160,000 from that.
Good for
which
you.
Was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't ever expect that to happen, So it opened my eyes essentially to, real estate investing and what's possible, right? So that led me down a rabbit hole and, ended up joining, homeschooled by Tariq in that process. But a lot of stuff happened. We moved to North Carolina instead of somewhere else in Texas because we always wanted to be there. And that allowed us to make that move fairly easily. And so we did that. I joined that mentorship program. But by the time I joined Homeschooled by Tariq, I bought that second flip house in Texas,
which is what we're talking about today.
That's what we're talking about today. And I hate to have to relive it, but it's quite a story. And I think it'll at least may not show what you can do right, but what you can avoid for
right.
Sure.
Yeah, you are definitely leading this up to be not such a fantastic deal. So let's start where you and I met. And I just want to line up the timeline here. So right. You had already purchased this property.
Yeah, I think we closed on it, if I'm not mistaken, either December, maybe January or something like that of 2022. Yeah.
But you were not living in the area. You were not living near it at this point.
No, we were already we moved to North Carolina August of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did work for a brewery for a very short time, a few months. Ended up quitting that, and because we had plenty of money still stacked aside, I was just going to burn the boats and just dive deep into real estate,
right?
Investing, and some would say it was a bad decision, but it led me to where I am today, and so I don't really regret anything. But.
And, I love that you say that. And that is a huge reason why why I wanted you on the show, because I know this was not a fantastic situation. And I tried a little bit to help you through some of the stuff. I feel like you were kind of really knee deep by the time that you and I met and our paths crossed. But right. I feel like you are such a genuine human being, and what you learn from this project only makes you so much better at what you do today. And it does end up being a wonderful, lovely story in the end. So let's get started on this project. How did you find this property?
So I was talking to a lot of wholesalers before I purchased that price. And at that time, the market was growing crazy, when I first started searching for my first deal, right? So I was looking, online and as far as Zillow and on-market deals, and then also talking to a lot of wholesalers. And I found a website called myhousedeals.com, I believe is what it's called. Okay. And it's a meeting place for wholesalers all across the country to throw their deals on there, right? So I found that house on that site. I got in touch with, I don't know if I should say the name or not, but I guess you can bleep it out. But American Home Buyers
Okay.
is a big company out there. Yeah. And, they were good. I wouldn't say anything bad about them, but they were asking, I believe, we'll call it 200. It was like 190 something, I believe.
Okay.
And from my experience up until then, I was throwing offers over asking and getting way bid out at that time. But like when I finally made that offer on that house, the market was starting to cool down without me really realizing it. And so I bid 225 and they're like, oh, okay.
And this is from a wholesaler.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. They were happy with that offer. So, and now looking back, I know why they were so happy to take it.
Yeah. Normally wholesalers, when they're dealing with investors, they get under what what they're asking. So, I mean, I remember this house. It had a pool. It was a really cool property, and it was correct. It had a pool, right? Yes.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
And it was in a neighborhood that wasn't fully developed yet. So there's lots of, land around it. So I thought it was a great house. What was the ARV at the time that you purchased it?
So when we were comping and everything, we saw houses going for, 450 to 5 something, and houses that were really nice going for, 6 to 700,000. So with what we had planned on doing with it at the time, we projected the ARV to be between 6 and 650.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a deal already. So,
right. Yeah. I was super excited back then.
Exactly. And you had already, got the bug of working on your parents' house, your mom and stepdad. And so, did I say that right? Mom and stepdad?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's describe the house. How many beds and baths? What year was it built? Was there anything special about the property? Give us a little description of just the property itself.
Yeah, so the property itself, it was in a very well-established neighborhood, but it was in the very back where there was a lot of home builders that were buying lots all around over there. They were doing some more development over in the back of that neighborhood, and it was kind of off on its own little island essentially. It was surrounded by trees, very very private. Had a big U-shaped driveway, had a pool, like you mentioned, in the back. It had a 3-car detached garage to it with an apartment above that, which you'd call it a 1-1. And then the house itself had 4 bedrooms, 2 baths in there. So it was essentially a 5-bed, 3-bath house. It was built in 1971, 1972, early 70s. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I really liked about it was in an established neighborhood. It was very private. It had a pool, and at the time seemed to have a lot of potential. And yeah,
I agree. It sounds like a slam dunk here. So, what were the estimated repairs? Now, for the listeners out there, you don't live in Texas anymore. You are now living in Charlotte, North Carolina, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And now you're doing a deal states away, and tell us your thought process and all of that.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense, don't it?
People do it all the time,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, I read a book by David Green. I'm sure you probably know the name. He's big on Bigger Pockets and stuff. Yeah. He wrote a book about long-term investing, and I just finished it around that time. And it just gave me confidence. I'm like, yeah, if he can do it, I can do it. Like I'm David Green, right?
All right. So estimated repairs. Let's start there. What needed to be done to the property?
Estimated repairs. So we were thinking at the time it was probably going to be around 150 for all the repairs. And I was saying worst case scenario, 200,000, but worst case scenario will still make a good profit. That's
Got it. And what needed to be done to the property?
At the time, it definitely needed a full facelift inside. right? Carpets, paint, and we were also. It was extensive. It was definitely a lot more than I should have took on as my first real deal there. But we were taking walls down in the bathrooms, restructuring it, making it because it had a very weird bathroom layout in the whole bath area.
It's like
It
a
was
Jack and Jill or something, from what I remember.
Hollywood style is what I was.
Hollywood style. You taught me that. Yes, I remember now.
Yeah,
So explain what that is.
Like a Z. It's like a Z-shaped flow. It's very weird. Like you walk in and you have a sink and a mirror, in one little area, and then to your right, a pocket door. You open the pocket door, you turn right, and then there's your shitter, right?
The shower and shitter.
Yeah, and that's it, right? The right next to the bath, right, and then you turn left. And there's another pocket door. You open that, and there's another little vanity by itself in its own little room. And then you take a right out of that room, and you're into a bedroom, one of the spare bedrooms.
Got it. Yeah. And so we just needed to kind of reconfigure it. I remember all that.
Right.
And then was there an issue at the pool? I can't remember.
So the pool, I drained it, and I not realizing how much it was going to cost to refill it at the time. But I drained it and just had it refinished because it had a lot of staining on it from algae and stuff like that. So, I mean, that was all factored into my numbers. So I didn't really have the timer on it or something went out. I ended up replacing that myself. So that only costed a couple $100 to do. So that wasn't the big deal. One of the biggest things that came up was the garage, the 3-car garage, detached garage. The whole framing around it was completely rotted. I had no idea when I bought it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember there being something deteriorating, and I couldn't remember. It was like something by the pool, but yes, now it's all coming back to me. And curious, did you do this evaluation? Like, did you fly to Texas to walk the property before you purchased it, or did you hire people to go through and give you estimates? I'm just curious how that started.
I essentially bought it sight unseen. Essentially, I mean, my brother-in-law, he walked the property with his phone. Internet sucked over there, so I was seeing a blurry walkthrough on my iPad before I put my offer in and purchased it. But I did fly back after I purchased it to walk through and really come up with a good game plan on what we needed to do with it and all that.
Okay.
It wasn't a good game plan, but what I thought we needed to do at the time. Yeah. We had with all that restructuring and stuff, there's a lot of things, I just didn't think about, like, locations of outlets and lights and, all that stuff that should be pre-planned.
Right.
With the engineer and all that stuff. Yeah, I didn't do any of that. So that also was one of the reasons why it took so long to finally finish, among a lot of other things. So,
and I have to commend you, though, because at this point, I think is when you joined Homeschooled, because you had already purchased it, and then you joined Homeschooled by Tarek Al Musa. And
right.
You, like I said, I have to commend you because you knew there was going to be a lot more with this project. So you invested in you to get the education to get through this project. So I think that's right. Awesome. There's people who just watch the TV shows and think, oh, I can flip a house, or I lived in my parents' house and fixed that one up on my own. So now I'm a pro. I could do this now. So,
right. Yeah, that was me. Yeah. You're describing me right.
But you took it a step further and sought after help to get you through this. So I think that's
right.
Awesome and very, very smart move. So, all right, you own the property now. Tell us what's going on during the renovations.
Okay, yeah. So we originally got 3 quotes from general contractors, and the first one came out. I actually had a fairly good feeling about that guy. I wish if I would have hired him in the beginning, it probably would have eliminated a lot of the things that I went through. But he quoted me, I believe, around $180,000 to do it, which was a little over what I was expecting, but not far off. And I got another quote from another guy. He quoted me $125 for just the inside. He didn't want to quote me for the outside unless I was serious which I don't blame him, but
Okay.
so I figured he would be around 200 for the whole thing. And then a family friend, which who I hired first, he came in at 90 something, or we call it 100,000 for the whole thing.
Ooh.
So way under, yeah, which, looking back, a red flag number one, right? And I had a feeling, the whole time, but I had like 110,000 to play with from the hard money lender that I borrowed some money from, and so I was just trying to stay as close to that as possible. And he knew my father-in-law for like 40 years, and my brother-in-law knew him for like 20 years or something like that. They went to the same church, and so I felt really good there. Like, hey, I
Yeah,
should be able to trust this guy,
of course.
And not that he was a bad guy. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he was horrible and all that, but he was very old school. He wasn't very professional. He did construction his whole life, but very much kind of under the table type thing, right? He didn't have his LLC or anything like that. Wasn't insured, and all that. But he talked very confidently when I met him, and he's like, Cory, I know I don't look like much. I remember him saying that a lot. He's like, but I've been doing this a long time, and I've got I know a lot of people that can help us get this done and this and that. And he walked the property with me. He quoted me 100,000. Me and my wife talked about it. We marinated on it for a few days. Ultimately, decided to go with him, and he also said his timeline was 6 to 8 weeks, which was red flag number two, because everybody else was like, 4 months, 6 months, So yeah, I'd say fast forward 8 months later, I had to fire him and let him go.
All this is coming back to me now. So I skipped over this one thing. So let's reverse for a second here. And you mentioned that you used a hard money lender. So when
Right.
how did you finance this property? Did you do 100% with the hard money lender? Tell me about the financing portion, because I skipped over that.
Right. So, I had, I think, allocated for that project of my own money. I wanted to spend around 50, 60. Okay. So I put 20K down with the hard money lender I found. And they were giving me 110,000 for repairs.
Good.
And I believed I had enough extra to cover the rest. And I had a 401k, which, I didn't want to touch, but I had that I knew that I could dip into, worst case scenario type thing. So, I would say after that, when we got halfway through with it, and I had to fire that first contractor, that's when I met my private money lender to help me finish it. And she got me originally like 65,000, I believe.
Okay.
To help finish it.
Good.
So, but then more happened.
Oh boy. Okay. So going back to the project now. So we're 8 months in, even though this family friend said it will take 6 to 8 weeks for 100K. And now nothing's getting done on time. And I remember how stressed you were about it. And so you had to bite the bullet, fire him, and then you hired another general contractor. So tell us about that situation.
Yeah. So he was he worked for a home builder, right? And he did a lot of high-end homes and stuff in Houston. He lived in Sugar Land, which is from the property about an hour and a half drive. Red flag. Shouldn't have hired somebody that far away, first off. But he was a younger guy. He was younger than me. And, he reached out to me, actually. So I put some stuff out on Facebook, asking for leads for, general contractors and stuff. He found me on there. He called me. We talked for a while. I had a good feeling about the guy. But what that situation ended up being, he was just essentially a consultant, not a project manager. And that's what I needed. And I told that guy from the beginning, like, I live in North Carolina. I need somebody that's going to babysit this project, and make sure things are getting done on time and this and that. All that was verbal, right? We did sign an agreement, but it just wasn't ironclad like it needed to be, So he went out to that property probably like once every other month or something. Yeah.
Yikes.
This was not being, it's not what I was needing, and so that led to a lot of things. The contractors that he had in there doing work were very, very, very messy. Um, one thing I can recall, that garage door, the 3-car garage had a long double garage door on it and a single door. They removed it, and I was supposed to save that because I didn't have it in the budget to have a new garage door put on. Well, they put it in the middle of the garage and were stepping all over it, throwing things all over it, drywall, mud, and all that stuff got caked on it. The whole property got trashed. We flew down there multiple times around that time to do a bunch of work ourselves and stuff. And there was just trash all over the yard, all in the garage. We had already laid flooring in the house that had drywall mud stuck to it all over the place. It was just a disaster when we finally flew back there. Yeah, I think that was right in the time that I had to fire the first guy. And we hired him on. It was a couple months later, we flew down. It was just, it was a nightmare.
And it's so hard being so far away and then being so disappointed when you get there. And by the way, drywall mud, I'm still trying to get it off my tile floor in my room next door here. So it is, and I've been here almost 2 years. So yeah, it is messy, messy, messy. All right. So did you stick with this guy or did you have to hire another person?
Yeah, I had to fire that guy too.
And let me pause for a second here, because having been in this industry for a few years now, when you hire a general contractor and then need to fire them, which I've had to do, the new general contractor coming in doesn't want to touch a lot of the work that they've done because their name is now going on it. And so a lot of times they come in and it's going to cost you, it's like you're starting over because they want to redo things themselves because they think they can do it better than whatever was done there before. So I'm sure I knew that's where you're going with this. So now you have GC number 3. What's going on with this guy?
Yeah, he was amazing.
Good.
He was amazing. And if any of your listeners want to reach out to me and get his contact info, I'd be more than happy to recommend this guy. He was amazing. And what's ironic about it is he went, going back in time to my parents' house when I had to replace the roof. He was the roofer that I had hired, and he did an amazing job. But I just thought he was just a roofer, and it just never occurred to me to reach out to him because that was, going like 2 years back or whatever. I forgot about the guy, to be honest. But I was going through my phone around that time, and I saw, in my phone, I didn't even have his name in there. It just said roofer, So,
that is so funny. I do the same thing. I have painter and 5 names will come up, or, landscaper. I'll just meet random people and I just throw in their landscaper. So yes, I agree. I'm I'm not sure who I'm calling, but yes, keep going.
Yeah. So, and actually what prompted me to find him, actually, now that I remember, the first contractor that I hired, the one that I fired after 8 months, the first thing he did was have that roof replaced on that house. And the roof needed a bunch of stuff. They didn't lay it right. So there was a bunch of areas that had to be redone to meet code or whatever. And I needed to find a roofer. So I was going through my phone and I saw a roofer and I was like, oh yeah, that was the guy that did the other roof on the other property. So I called him and I was talking to him for a while. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm a general contractor. I do everything.
Wow.
If you need any help, just let me know. And at that point, I was already contemplating, letting those guys go. And so I was like, well, why don't you, stop by, take a look, see what you think. If it's something you're interested in, I might consider letting you take over, And so he went by there, he checked everything out, and he called me just essentially freaking out. It's like, I don't know who you have or who you hired over here, but he's like, they're doing everything ass backwards. And he's like, your floors aren't being protected. And there was a bunch of stuff he was naming off that was just being done wrong. And he actually lived local too. He only lived about 20 minutes from that property.
Nice.
So yeah, I eventually just finally, I had to think about it, because there was just a lot to consider, but eventually I was just like, all right, if I want to get this thing done anytime in the near future, because the guys at that point that I had on the job at the time, they were sending one guy to do work. They were supposed to start at 8 in the morning, work till 5. They'd show up at noon and finish at 2. And it was, there's like one or two guys at a time, and it was just moving at snail speed. There was just no way it was going to get done anytime soon. So, yeah, so I hired him, and he got people out there very quickly, multiple people doing different trades all at the same time. It took him, I want to say, just like a month or so to wrap it up.
Nice.
And he did phenomenal work, and he did have to redo a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I had to get very creative with financing to even get it done, but I made it happen. And yeah, so he was very, very organized, very systematized, what I needed from the beginning. So.
Lesson learned, huge here. So, and Cory, don't feel bad because I've been in the same situation. I went through 3 GCs on one project as well. So, and the habit of the GCs here in Raleigh is they like to ghost you. I'll get them over there to give quotes and then they disappear. Right. I'm like, come on. So, finding a good GC is most of the battle right there. All right. So now you have a finished project and you are going to market. So you paid $225. You had an ARV of, between 600, 650. So what's the market doing at this time when you are going to list it?
That sums it up.
So what did you end up listing it for?
We decided to list it for $525.
Okay. And that is, originally when you bought it, you said, houses in the area were between $450 and $500 on up. So you list it for $525. And what was the time at this point? So you had gone 8 months with the first guy. You went some more months with the dirty drywall people. And then you have your third amazing roofer GC. And what was the timeline to complete the project? Right.
So, we closed on the property, I think I said, January-ish, around that time in 2022. We didn't start work until April, like the very beginning of April, maybe end of March, something like that, of 2022. And then it's finally on the market June 16th, I believe, of 2023.
Okay. It's not horrible, Cory. It's not, so don't. We have taken 2 years on projects, so just thank you for sharing this story. I know this is painful, but this is so important for listeners to hear. So you list it for $525. How long is it on the market? Are you getting showings? What are the reviews? What's going on at this point?
Yeah, so we listed at $525. Viewings were a little slow. I don't believe we had any offers at $525, so we dropped it to $500.
Okay.
Probably about 3 weeks or so around that time. At $500, we started getting some more showings. I believe still no offers. We dropped it to $475, and that's when we got our first offer. We went under contract twice, and the third time finally went through. But after $475, we dropped it to $465, then we dropped it to $450, and then we dropped it to $445. So in November of 2023, we went under contract with the last people and closed in December.
Okay.
So it was on the market for 6 months before we closed.
All right. And what was your overall repair costs?
This is where it gets scary.
This is the number I don't know. So
we need some music, some doom and gloom.
That's all I have.
That's not going to work.
How about this?
There you go. So with everything, closing costs, repairs ended up being around $270.
Okay.
$270, yeah, and then closing costs ended up being about $40K. We lost about $80K of our own money, $50K in credit card debt. Oof. Getting it through the line. I owed my private money lender by the time we closed. We actually had to do a short sale on it, about $40K. Yeah, hard money lender had to eat that. Still owed my private money lender $160K after it closed.
And you borrowed 65 in the beginning.
65, yeah. She in total $160K before everything was said and done. Yeah. So yeah, total loss came down to about $270K. Yeah.
And this made you want to get out of real estate completely, correct?
Definitely put a pause on it, right? I still to this day will plan on doing other real estate projects. My goal of being a full-time investor is gone. I don't think I'm going to do that. But it did lead me to a lot of things. So after all that happened, me and my wife sat down and our priority just all became my private money lender. We're like, she took out a bunch of money from her 401k. She gave us some personal money of hers that she had set aside. She put a lot into it because she wanted to get it to the finish line and hope to get some of it back, right?
Right.
And I just felt terrible. I really did. We lost a lot of sleep over it. And so we went out to eat one night and we were just sitting there contemplating strategies on how we were going to, I didn't want that to be like a 10-year thing, 15-year thing. I wanted to pay her off as fast as possible and, hopefully within a couple of years, So how we were going to make that happen, At the time, I went back to work. I was working as a sales manager for a brewery, but I was making not enough.
Right.
Right, to make anything happen. My wife stayed at home with the kids. She homeschools. She does all that. And it was very important to us that we wanted to keep that thing going. We didn't want to put our kids in public school. And so we were talking about doing that, though, and her going back to work full time. And, if we did that, looking at the numbers, we could probably finish paying her off in a few years. But then my wife came up with the idea to become a surrogate.
Really? I did not know this.
I don't think you do. Yeah, I don't think we ever talked about that. Yeah. So yeah, we definitely discussed that for a little while to decide if we were going to do it. But my wife, believe it or not, she was that's what she wanted to do. She didn't want to go back to work and put the kids in public school. Homeschooling is very important to us, and that would allow us to do that. And we looked into it, and it pays very well. Believe it or not, and it looked like if we did that, we could probably potentially pay her off in 2 or 3 years. But at the same time, too, I was like, well, let's look into that. And around that time, I was reading a book, and maybe I'll save the title for when you ask me in a minute. But it talked about, the book I was reading talked about, you can become very wealthy without being a business owner. There's a lot of high commission jobs out there where, you get paid for your performance, not for your time.
Right.
And that's how you can become wealthy doing that. So I looked into it. I actually applied for 40 different jobs that met that criteria. I went on 15 job interviews. I actually took 2 other jobs before I landed where I work now. I worked for a solar company going door-to-door knocking for a week. That's all. I told myself when I was going to start doing that, you got to be very careful, right? Because the company matters on doing something like that. So I knew after a week that wasn't going to be a good fit. And then I worked for a roofing company for a day. That's all it took for me to realize, nope, this ain't going to work. And then West Shore Home, I came across them. I went on an interview with them. I got the job. And the very first day I was going through their training manual. And there was just stuff littered in there from, different sales strategies that I learned from, Grant Cardone and Zig Ziglar and all those guys, all those big names. And all the stuff that they preached was just littered throughout their whole manual. And I was like, they know what they're doing at least, right? And then I found out how big they were, 41 locations, 21 different states, $1 billion company. They're very systematized, very organized. They know what they're doing. And they flew me to Dallas for 2 weeks for training. The training was top notch. I've been there over a year now. and the opportunity has just been amazing. So we should, with bonuses and everything, come March of next year. We started paying her back March of last year. Come March of next year, we should have her paid down by like a little over 100,000 or so, somewhere around
Nice.
there. I think we're already at about 60 right now. So yeah, it's. I'm just very grateful for going through all that stuff because it led me to just make a drastic change in my life. Led me to this job, and opened my eyes to the possibilities, and I'm just grateful, right? I really am.
And I'm sure it's such a good fit for you with this company because I do know you and I know your talent that you have. And, you just had a bad deal here and it was just a bunch of wrong things in the beginning and tough decisions. And so I admire you for continuing to pay off your private money lender. I have been a private money lender and lost money and they never were like, oh, we'll pay it off. And it was just, nope, sorry. Snooze you lose. No,
Right.
not snooze you lose, but they just, I have been in that boat. I didn't lose tons of money, but it still hurt and has
Right.
really made me try to be a better private money lender as well. So I do admire you for taking on that responsibility and staying genuine to you and doing that. And what a gift your wife is giving, being a surrogate. I think that is also amazing. And it has this horrible situation, propelled you to a much better situation where financially you're going to be better off and you still have all this experience under your belt. And I do know that you will continue someday getting back into it and doing your own thing. Right. And I think that's wonderful. So going and looking back at this project, which I know is tough, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you had?
Choose your contractors wisely, right?
And how would you go about doing that, just for the listeners?
Yeah, pay attention to red flags, and then, actually, I'm essentially a contractor myself now, and when they say that they can start tomorrow, that's a bad sign, right?
That means they're not busy because nobody wants to hire them. So yes, good point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of different contractors out there, but the good ones, the good local ones, if they're good, they're going to be busy, yep. Right? And they're not going to be able to start right away. So keep in mind, in my experience, I was in a hurry. I wanted to start right away because you're paying that interest on that hard money loan, and that was one of my decisions I made back then. Hey, I'm going to hire this guy because he can start right away. But yeah, you gotta pay attention to that. So
licensed and insured, that's huge. And you also mentioned you also mentioned contracts because you had an agreement, I think, with the second one, and the importance of putting things in writing. I always think of Judge Judy because she says, "Show me the contract," and they're like, "Oh, well, we just did a handshake," and she's like, "You get nothing," So
none of that.
Yeah. So
no handshakes. There's got to be, you got to have a solid contract in there. I would definitely advise anybody starting out if they're not part of a mentorship program like Tariq's program. Tariq. Yeah. Always mispronounce his name. Don't let him listen to this one. But yeah, because a good mentorship program will have templates and stuff like that you can use, but every state's different. Every state has different laws. So you definitely want to find a lawyer, an attorney that knows what he's doing. He's local. He understands real estate and all that, and his experience working with other investors and stuff, and have him draw up a contract. Sit down, talk about what you need, and get that ironclad to protect both parties, right?
And I also want to briefly touch on the ARV, because how did you determine, because you said some were going like 600 to 650, but you originally were, and you kind of landed right where you originally said. So why is it so important to be solid on picking a very good after repair value?
Well, that's how you make or break it, right?
Yep.
So you make your money when you buy, right?
Yes.
So I lost my money when I bought. So yeah. So I think one of the biggest mistakes, when we were looking at houses that were on the higher price tag area, they were within a mile, and size and all that was very comparable, but they were just in a different neighborhood, right? And that neighborhood, price tags there were much higher. But where that was district at, their houses were selling for less, right? And at that time, 525, 550 would still would have been a fair listing price, but also it took so long,
right.
And then 2022, the market just shifted big time, at least over there. And I didn't account for that either, right? And so you got to account for that. Markets don't just stay hot forever. So.
That is true. And I do remember because it was kind of tucked away in the back of the neighborhood. So there weren't other comps like right there next to it for you
right.
to, so it was a tough property to comp properly. So I will give you that one. But, and you also can't compete against new builds. If yours is built in 1971, 1972, even though these larger ones are being built, you still have to make sure you're comping with ones of the same age. So Cory, anything else you want to add about this project? And that will be a good nugget for the listeners.
If anything, I would just say, if you're doing your first project, don't take on one like that. Do something a little simpler, right?
Maybe local.
Maybe local, 100%.
Because that cost you money. I remember you flew out there quite a bit, so that cost money times. Too. Yes.
I in between flying and driving down there about 10 different times. Yeah. So yeah, definitely do it local. Don't feel like you gotta bite off more than you can chew, like I did. But also, don't be afraid to take the jump, because, I think my experience maybe takes a cake for a lot of people's horror stories. And I still, till this day, I don't regret doing it. I did lose a lot of sleep, a lot of nights worrying what was going to happen and all that. But in the end, if you stay resilient, and just push through, stay hopeful, and just make the changes that you need to make in your life to make your life better, and don't be afraid to do that. Things will work out. It will, but you got to stay resilient. You can't give up. If you give up, then you are screwing yourself.
Yes, exactly. Well, Cory, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. And I do think this probably takes the prize with a deficit of 270. And that hurts to even say it, but all the lessons you learned and that you are still moving forward. And so I do truly appreciate you sharing the story. It's a huge lesson for people to learn. And we are going to move to the second part of the podcast here, which is what makes Cory a badass, which I do believe you are. And I'm going to use the acronym BADASS, and the first letter is B for book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
Yeah, so definitely Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. That's what I was referencing a minute ago by T. Harv Eker. Very good book, especially for somebody who is new into not just real estate investing, but starting an entrepreneurial journey. It's good for mindset, different way of looking at things, and that was the book where I had heard he was talking about high commission sales jobs and that sort of thing. And that's what nudged me to do what I needed to do. And that one little nugget I got out of that book really did change my life and change my career and give me the opportunity to not only get out of debt in a very short amount of time, this time next year, maybe a little bit after that, we'll be debt free, very close to it.
Nice.
And then that'll allow me the opportunity to start taking all my savings and start investing back in real estate, which I do plan on doing. So, definitely would highly recommend that book.
Very, very good. All right. The first A in BADASS is for advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So I can't tell you who from because I've heard it so many times. But first, don't take advice from people who aren't doing or have done what you're trying to do.
Right.
Plain and simple, right? And it's very natural for all of us to want to take the advice of our friends and family. Those are the people that we love the most, that we trust the most. But you have to see it at face value, right? If you're trying to start a business and your mom or your dad or your brother or your best friend has never started a business, then don't listen to anything they say about it. Okay. You can still love them and respect them, but you don't take their advice. You just have to tune it out. And I think it all comes from, they don't want to see you fail,
right.
So their advice is going to be, don't try, because they don't want to see you get hurt. But, another piece of advice I've learned is to look at failure as a part of success, right?
Yes.
That's not the opposite, right? Learning to actually embrace failure is one of the hardest things for people to do, one of the hardest things I've ever done. But when you switch that mindset, everything changes, right? That's when you can really start growing. So, don't take advice from people who don't know what they're talking about.
And instead, go seek out the advice. That's how you found Homeschooled by Tarek.
Right.
And do go to people who have started businesses and been in the same shoes you are trying to put your feet into. So thank you for saying all of that, because it was a struggle for me in the beginning as well. And your loved ones, they have very good intentions for you,
Right.
But they also live in their comfort zones. And so
right.
for you wanting to break out of your comfort zone, that's tough for them to swallow sometimes too. So I love everything you just said there. All right, moving on, because I could just keep talking about that. The D in badass is for drive. What drives Cory to be successful?
So, going back in time again to that first flip, my parents' house, when they passed away, again, with them being on disability and stuff, they were entrepreneurs. They didn't have any kind of retirement plan in place or anything like that, no life insurance or anything. So, I love them to death. I miss them, but they left me in a very difficult spot. With that house, it needed so much work. If I would have, I couldn't have sold it in the condition it was. And so, having a little girl and a little son at the time, it just made me reflect on what kind of legacy do I want to live them? What kind of example do I want to be for them? And I asked myself a question of how successful do I want to be? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I shouldn't put a limit on it. I should just do my best and try my hardest. Right. So I didn't want to just leave them one house. I wanted to leave them multiple, I just want to do something that was just going to leave them in a better position. Right. So that's what drove me to do the whole thing. And that's what keeps me motivated is just my family, my kids, and wanting to be the dad that I know it can be, and ultimately teach them how to be, just a good example for their kids. And, I want to leave a lot more behind than just a rundown house.
Well, they are very lucky to have you as a dad. So the next A in badass is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on?
So, right now, at work anyway, with my job, my goal is to finish the year at 2 million net sales.
Nice.
And I'm on track to do that, but I got to keep hustling, and I'll get there. And then I think I mentioned this earlier before we started recording, but I do want to start working on generating my own leads for the company. That I actually get a 5% more commission base if I do that. And that'll create a lot more opportunities. So this Sunday, actually, me and my wife are going to start a direct mail campaign and just start sending little thank you notes and stuff to my previous customers to help that along. So
very smart.
Those are my two big things right now. Yeah.
Well, West Shore Home is very lucky to have you. So, all right. The first S in badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
Right. So what I had put down for that, was that direct mail campaign. We're going to have that automated. So that will definitely help us out a lot. And then continuing, I did fall off a little bit with my wife and the segregacy and all that, but starting to get up at 5 a.m. every day, go to the gym, start my day off the right way, listen to motivational audible book, keep my mind in the right spot, because success in sales is all about, keeping that positive energy and your mindset up. So, and I was doing that every day for 8 months, and then I did fall off. So extreme ownership there, but I need to get back into doing that for sure.
And your morning routine is a system, because I find the days when I don't do my morning routine, I'm shot for the rest of the day. So that is absolutely a system and an important one. And I also want to touch on direct mail, because a lot of people don't do direct mail. And instead, I hear so many people doing cold calling, which, by the way, I hate. And I will freak out on people cold calling me. You mentioned solar before, and I had someone call me like 8:45 at night, which, by the way, my bedtime's 8 o'clock, 8:45, wanting to sell me solar. And I lost my shit on them. So I can't stand cold callers. But snail mail, think about how many pieces of mail you get in a day. And, here's a pretty postcard from I just got a thank you note from Cory for, when he did work on our house. And so I just also feel like it's something tangible that you can throw in a drawer, that when you are ready to sell your house and say, oh yeah, I got this postcard from this company. And so I am a big believer in direct mail. It has been my constant from day one. About 25% of our leads still comes from direct mail. I bought a 12 unit in Southern Virginia from a postcard that I sent to a random guy. And so I love that you brought up direct mail. I really geek out over it. From my coaching.
Right. Yeah. I think you're the one you probably told me this too, but it's a way of staying top of mind, if anything. Right. And like in my job, it's very easy to be forgetting about. I meet these people originally for a couple hours and then that's it. Right. Time goes on, life gets busy. And when the opportunity, if you're not doing direct mail or something like that, where they meet a family friend or somebody they're talking to that needs, we do bath remodeling and windows and exterior doors. And if they're talking to somebody that's needing that, like, oh, I would recommend you somebody, he was great, I just don't remember his name or the company.
Right.
But doing that in direct mail, if they get a thank you note for one after the job's complete, and then just like every holiday or season, then I can just make an excuse to send them, just like, hey, thanks again. If you need anything, let me know. That type of thing. It's just, you stay top of mind. They remember your name. And then when that opportunity does arise, you do get recommended, right?
Yes.
So,
and instead of being roofer in your phone.
Right. 100%.
All right, Cory, this has been amazing. To wrap up this podcast, the final S in badass is for success. What does success mean to Cory Chaney?
Becoming self-sufficient, right? Not relying on anybody else for a paycheck, which I'm not there yet. But that is my goal, to do that, when you can take control of your own finances, your own life, and get to a point to where you can wake up one day and your paycheck's just always going to be there. Right.
Right.
Financial freedom, you might want to call it. Right. So, that's my goal. And that's what that means to me. And if I can also, achieve that for myself and then teach my kids how to do that, that would be the icing on the cake. So.
Well, you are such a genuine human being, and I am lucky to call you friend. We share the same state, and we have gotten together. You actually walked the house that I'm in right now when it was still under construction. So you came over, we did a little tour.
Yeah.
Yep. So Cory, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for sharing that really, really tough story, but it was such a great lesson for the listeners. And so, Cory, thank you again. And if the listeners do want to reach out to you, I'll put your information in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for being here today.
No, it was a pleasure. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening. We will catch you on the next episode. Now, go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.